What can we expect from the Dallas Stars tonight as they roll out a NHL-heavy lineup against the Wild? We get our first look at Jake Oettinger this season, and I have a player to watch. That's next on Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. The preseason continues to roll on for the Dallas Stars. They roll out a NHL-heavy lineup tonight against the Wild at the American Airlines Center. We get to see Jamie Benn for the first time, Matt Duchene, Roope Hintz, Tyler Seguin, and plenty more. Miro Heiskanen is paired up with Matt Dumba. We'll keep our eyes closely on that. Jake Oettinger is in between the pipes for the first time this season, and I have a player to watch, all on a jam-packed episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Stars are currently 2-0 in the preseason. Took down the Avs the other night by a final score of 3-2. The Leon Bischel buzzer beater blast in the dying seconds of regulation took down the St. Louis Blues a few days ago as well. Preseason success record-wise does not correlate to regular season success by any stretch of the imagination, but always good to build momentum and stack a few wins together. Should be a fun contest tonight. Stars obviously have a few more regulars in. We'll probably see Seguin along with Marchment and Duchene, so we get to see that trio for the first time, which has really been one of their more consistent lines over the past year and a half now, since Duchene, of course, got added last season. That was a trio that was pretty much inseparable for the entire season, and for a large chunk of last year, they were the most consistent line for the Dallas Stars. And you look at what Matt Duchene did last season, namely with 65 points, and the Stars were able to re-sign him at just $3 million. And coming out of the postseason last year, I was not on board with re-signing Duchene because I thought his number was going to go up. But Duchene at this point in his career, still being paid by Nashville, he's just looking to win. And he took a team-friendly deal once again, and I'm all on board for having Matt Duchene at the number they picked him up at. And, 25 goals last season and 65 points, that's what you're looking for out of Duchene, but it comes with a caveat. You have to produce in the postseason. Outside of what we saw in Game 6, was it, against Colorado, the double overtime goal, he was real quiet, had a goal in the first round series against Vegas, I believe, but after that, just not a whole lot to speak of. Seguin, at this point in his career, he's banged up. He's not going to be fresh and 100% consistently. I think last year he was probably the best health-wise he had been at for, 3 or 4 seasons, and it showed in his play. I mean, he had 25 goals and 52 points in 68 games. He missed about a month at one point, and I think he cracks the top 30. He was on an absolute tear last season, and this is sort of him and Jamie Benn's last hurrah, if you will, with Benn's contract expiring at the end of this season, albeit Jim Nill came out a few days ago, as I spoke about on another episode on Locked On Stars, pretty much confirming Jamie Benn's coming back as long as Jim Nill is the general manager here at the Dallas Stars. But this is really Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin's last full season, it feels like, of really, truly being a contender. And I think the Stars are going to be good a few seasons from now. But who knows what you're going to get out of Matt Duchene. It's another one-year deal. He may not be returning. We don't know where that is going to go. Jamie Benn is done after this season. Even if he re-signs, there's still a lot of questions with the lineup. Seguin, how much longer can he truly keep it together in the last few years of his deal? Seguin's on the hook till 26-27 at 9.85. And Johnston has to get paid. Otter has to get paid. Those are going to be huge contracts that the Stars are going to have to work around. Maybe not huge in the grand schemes of the NHL, but there's going to be a lot of money and resources allocated to players like Johnston, Stankoven even, and he could be a bridge deal. I think they want to get Johnston locked up pretty long term. I would like to do the same with Jake Oettinger. Just secure your number one, have him for the next 6 to 8 years. So how much can the Stars truly continue to just draft these young, talented players? They've been on a fantastic run, but at some point, if your young players aren't coming up and producing, which they are now, which is a great sign, and then Seguin and Benn go their separate ways, right? Or eventually their time has come to an end here in Dallas. This year feels like it is like the last hurrah for both of them, even if they're together next year. And that is a very real possibility. It's probably 95%. But there's just a lot of other factors that have to be determined by the front office. But this does feel like, okay, like this is sort of your last dance together, where they're going to be sort of, I would say, integral parts of this thing here in Dallas. Jamie Benn is still the leader, and offensively, he's still contributing at a pretty high level, at least the last 2 seasons, right? I mean, 60 points, nothing to scoff at. And Tyler Seguin still finding a way to get the puck in the back of the net. He's had to adapt his game a bit, and he's done a great job of that. But after this year, it's like, and I've already started knocking on the door of like, this is the Wyatt Johnston team. This is Wyatt's team. It's starting to feel that way. And I think this is sort of the last year of this duo that's really run the Dallas Stars. This feels like this will be the true end of the era, right? We're already sort of in the transition of that. And you could argue it already has transitioned, but I think this is like the last, okay, like Seguin, Benn, this era comes to an end at the end of this season, and then it's Robo, Miro, Roope, Johnston, and beyond at that point. And they could still be a part of the team, right? I'm not saying they're going to be non-existent, and they're still not going to be leaders. Like, as long as they're in the dressing room, these guys are the players you have to lean on. You have to have veterans in your locker room, especially around the young talent that the Stars have. It pays dividends down the line. Look what Joe Pavelski has done in his really a short amount of time in Dallas. A short amount of time, the impact he's had on the young players. And you see it from morning skate today. Seguin's out there, first one on the ice, tipping pucks. Not saying he wouldn't do that before, but let's face it, Pavelski had an impact on everyone, not just the Wyatt Johnstons of the world. So it's a great time to be a Dallas Star. And I guess I never really pontificated it before, but this feels like this is the last season of sort of this era. It finally comes to an end, and it's already felt that it kind of has in some ways, but it's the transition now. The last 2 years have been the transition, but now it's like, okay, it begins next year. It's Wyatt Johnston and company, right? So yeah, how are we going to look back on this era? If they win a cup this season, we'll look very fondly on it. But as of right now, they haven't been able to get over the hump. And they've put a lot of good pieces around them. They've put a lot of good pieces around them in the last few seasons. You can't say that for, 2014 to 2020 in a lot of ways. They weren't very deep. They were sniffing to get into the postseason every year. They were kind of just over 500. Like, they're a contender now. See if they can get over the hump. But should be a fun matchup tonight against the Wild. I'll go ahead and go through your preseason rosters, not postseason. Back is in Ben, Duchene, Hintz, Artuhiru again, Cole Lind, who had a really nice game against the Blues, Mason Marchment, Kyle McDonald. You get Pedersen, Seguin, Stankoven, and Stranges. On the back end, Dumba, Heiskanen, Chris, Lindell, Lundqvist, and Brendan Smith. Casey DeSmith and Jake Oettinger are your goaltenders. Speaking of Jake Oettinger, a win total projection for him next season, and we get our first look at Otter in between the pipes tonight. We'll tell you a bit more in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. NFL is for Sundays. We all sit on our couches, we take in all the games, and sometimes we want to have some fun, get in on the action while watching on Sunday. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel. You can get it on your phone. It's free. It's available on the App Store, Google Play Store. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you got to do is place your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So Jake Oettinger is expected to be in the crease tonight for a total of 2 periods. That is the breakdown of the split against the Wild. Otter will go for 2 periods, and we're supposed to see Casey DeSmith for 1 tonight. And DeSmith looked really good the other night. It'll be nice to see Jake Oettinger as well. I did want to point out his numbers from last season because it was a disappointing year for Jake Oettinger, and I'm really bullish on this season for him. I think it's going to be a career year. I think he's going to have a really nice season. I did a segment on this over the offseason that you can go find about goalies that just sort of break out in their 4th full season in the National Hockey League. And I went back and looked at some of the generational talents like Carey Price and Vasilevsky, Marc-Andre Fleury as well. And look, I'm not saying Otter's going to become that generational type goalie. I think he can. I hope he can, right? Is he ever going to be the Shesterkin of the league or the Hellenbach, right? Like just perennially a Vezina candidate? I don't know. But I'm not going to pull the plug now at 25 years of age. Like he's a young goaltender. And he's had some good experience. 2.72 goals against average, .905 save percentage in 54 games last season. Like, that's not going to do it, right? It's not in the top 10 in either of those categories. But his playoffs are really good. In 19 games, a 2.24 goals against average and a .915 save percentage. Like really, really good stuff there. A much better turnaround late in the season. Did not have a great postseason in 22-23. He was hurt during that, however. And then, of course, he broke out on the scene in that 7-game series against Calgary. And he's been average since that series against Calgary. Really, he's been slightly above average, to be nice. But it just feels like this could be the season. It all comes together. There was a fantasy win projection by the NHL. He's projected to win 38 games next season is where they have him, which was tied for the most with Georgiev. And Georgiev played quite a bit last season. And look, wins are not necessarily a goalie stat. Otter has a fantastic team in front of him, and I'm sure that accounts for a dozen wins or so, right? Otter's going to win you some games. He's going to steal you some ones, especially on the road. He was pretty good on the road last season. You could say that for him and Wedgwood. Dallas just needs to be better at home, man. They got to be much better on home ice. They struggled to get on the board first. They seemed to play a lot of catch-up hockey, which they were much better on the road, mainly because they had better goaltending, number one. Otter was just significantly better on the road. You look at his statistics, the splits, like he was top 10 in save percentage and goals against, wins and all that on the road. If you put the home and the road together, like his overall season, he's like 20th. Just in you know, some of those statistical categories. So 38 feels about right. I mentioned yesterday, you know, Pizza Vor came out and he thinks 55 games is sort of the mark for Oettinger, which makes sense. So DeSmith would get, you know, 26 starts or so. And we'll see the breakdown. Hopefully Otter can stay healthy. That's going to be really important that he stays healthy, because the more he plays, he's going to get in a groove. And we saw that, and he was really working through some of his issues and struggles last season. But after his injury in January, came back post All-Star break, is when he really started to find his game, and you started to watch and think, okay, yeah, that's more like the Otter we've seen. He's had some gaps in the postseason. He's had some stinkers. If he can be a little bit more consistent, clean that up, he's going to have a really, really good year. And Dallas needs him to be, right? You got to have a netminder that's just incredible. I mean, look at the teams last year that went to the Cup. And Skinner was atrocious in the first series and, you know, first series and a half, really. But, I mean, he locked it down against Dallas. How? I don't know. Maybe the Stars helped him out, did him some favors. But Skinner was really, really solid from the Western Conference final on. We can give him that. And I know they went down 3-0 to Florida. And Bobrovsky, I mean, that speaks for itself. The last two season runs he's made have been just dynamite. And he was incredible. And Bobrovsky was a goaltender that 2 years ago wasn't even the number one heading into the postseason for Florida. If you recall, Alex Lyon was starting games, and then Bobrovsky got the call, and they went on a decent run. And then, of course, last year he was just perfect from the opening puck drop of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's a big year for Otter. It really is, especially in a contract year. So I think he's going to have a nice season. Players with a contract on the horizon, they seem to buckle down and figure out how to play really, really good hockey again. And I think Otter will certainly help from that. His contract's going to be interesting with Shesterkin. That sort of is going to set the market. I think Sorokin has to have a deal done too. It bodes well if the Stars can get Oettinger done early. And it could be risky to give him a long-term deal. I see that. But man, if you can, like, 6 years, $7 million, you know, I mean, I would be comfortable with 8x8. I really would. I know a lot of others would not be on board for that. I just think you lock him up and you don't worry about it. You don't want to be without a number one goalie. You don't want to be without him. And they're going to get him done. He's going to be here. It's just what's the number going to be? I think it'll be significant. And I'm curious if they get it done early. I think they will. They seem to be kind of do that. That's the history of Nil and the Stars. We could see halfway through the season, maybe in January or something like that, they just get a deal done, depending on how he's playing, right? if he's off to a good start the first half of the season, they may just get him done. And that way he doesn't have to think about it. It's not a storyline. It can't be a distraction. He doesn't have to take questions for it the whole year, because that'll sort of be a overhanging cloud throughout the season. If it's not done before, the Stanley Cup playoffs and the whole off season, it's going to be what the contract talks like, what is this, all that. And then that can become its own storyline throughout the season. So this was, I guess, a little season preview of Jake Oettinger, who we'll see for the first time tonight against the Wild. Just for funsies to take a look at the Wild roster, Sammy Walker's going to be in. He's had a couple nice seasons in the AHL. The Minnesota Gopher. Husnudinov, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's a tough one. These Russians here in Minnesota, but he's a good young player for them. John Merrill's in. Gustafsson is supposed to get the whole game tonight in between the pipes. So the Wild number one netminder are going to get some action here at the American Airlines Center. So all good things at the end of the day. It'll be on Victory Plus as well. So it's always a good thing. All right. Time to jump in to a player to watch. I have one, and no, it is not a normal Dallas Star. It's a guy that's going to be fighting for a roster spot. Maybe not this season, but possibly in the next couple of years. We'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. It's time for a player to watch tonight in preseason game number three. It's time for a player to watch tonight in preseason game number 3 for the Dallas Stars against the Minnesota Wild. So a lot of interesting options, of course, with Roope and Miro and Jamie Benn and Duchene and company, but we all know what to expect from those players. So we're going with someone that's fighting for a roster spot and more than likely a huge long shot for the Dallas Stars roster this season. But he's a player that was drafted back in 2020. He's got a little funky skating style, but I really, really, really enjoy watching him play. Just 22 years of age, Antonio Stranges. That is my player to watch tonight. He is a lot of fun to watch. He's speedy, he's elusive, and he's got some game in him. He's number 71, so keep an eye out for number 71. In the AHL last season, had 23 points in 55 games, 11 goals, and 12 assists. He was a -11, so not the best statistics in a lot of ways, but we saw him in London in the OHL, and he had a couple of big years, and he's just a really, really fun watch. He was a 4th-round pick, so maybe the Stars can hit on another late-round draft pick, but Antonio Stranges is going to be my player to watch tonight. Yes, we get our first sight of him in the preseason. Just really enjoy his tape. I really encourage you, go watch some highlights for him. He's kind of got that funky skating style, but boy, it works. It certainly works. So I'll be keeping an eye on him. Another one, just a little honorable mention, is Cole Lynn. Thought he played great in the first game against St. Louis. Had a lot of chances, a really nice passer, set up a few guys in tight, got some power play work as well. So Cole Lynn is another one I want to throw in there as well. And he's a sneaky pick to maybe get some playing time in the NHL this season. He got some looks with Seattle, and I know Dallas is much deeper and there are not as many holes in the roster. But with injuries, Cole Lind is, I think, a candidate that could step in and play a few games for you this season as well. So 71-17. Just flip those. The reciprocals, is that what the reciprocals are? I could be completely wrong on that. Can't remember. Was not great in math class, as you can imagine. So those are my players to watch. Game 3 of the preseason, Dallas Stars versus the Minnesota Wild at the American Airlines Center. Stars come back to play the Wild on Sunday at the end of this week in Minnesota. I'm currently in Minnesota. I'll be going to that one at the XL. So can't wait to see the preseason in action and see the boys. That'll be a great time. By the way, shout out to my boy, Blake Tyson, hooking me up, get to stay in his guest room. And I'm hanging out here all weekend. And we got the NAHL showcase. So I'll be calling games and we'll be doing Locked On Stars every single day, because that's what we do here on Locked On Stars, baby. All righty, that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Drop a like, drop a comment below. Are there any players you're interested in watching tonight for the Dallas Stars, or what do you have your eyes on throughout the preseason? What has you interested? What has you intrigued? What are you excited for? Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're almost to 2,500 subscribers. Let's get there before opening night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy tonight's game. We'll break it down tomorrow and plenty more. So long, Stars fans.